You don't need to control reality. You just need to honor the laws your observation is already activating. While most people chase answers, trying to fix the outside world, a quiet intelligence is being overlooked: the way you observe. Your gaze is not passive, it is creative. Every time you observe something, a thought, a situation, an emotion, you're not just witnessing it, you're shaping it. You're touching the invisible field of reality with a vibration that alters time, energy, and the outcomes that follow. Maybe no one has ever told you this, but you're interacting with the universe all the time. And the most powerful instrument of that interaction is your consciousness. It's not effort, control, or force that transforms reality. It's the quality of presence you bring to each moment, the vibration you choose when you look at what stands before you. Today, you're going to discover something profound. There are 6 hidden laws within your very own gaze, spiritual and quantum principles that are already at work, even if you're unaware. They move in the silence between thoughts, in the intentions you don't always notice, in the way you react or choose to observe. When you understand and apply these laws, something changes. You stop living reactively and step into the role of conscious co-creator. That's the moment the universe begins to respond differently, because you're seeing differently. Get ready. The 6 laws of observation will show you that reality begins exactly where you decide to place your awareness. Law 1, the law of presence. Have you noticed how reality seems to slip through your fingers when you're distracted? As if life continues unfolding, but you're not really there. The truth is, reality only responds to the observer who is fully present. And this is the first law, the law of presence. Time is not a rigid, continuous line as we were taught. It's a flexible field that bends, speeds up, or slows down according to the observer's state of consciousness. When you're truly present, whole, aware, something clicks in the flow of time. It stops being an enemy that slips away and becomes a silent, malleable ally. Most people live stuck in 2 places that don't exist: the past that's gone and the future that hasn't arrived. They replay old scenes, regrets, stories that have already ended, or they project into tomorrow, anxious, tense, trying to predict or control what hasn't yet happened. In both cases, one thing is certain: energy scatters, time fragments, and reality becomes noisy. But something extraordinary happens when you root yourself in the now. Your presence becomes a magnetic field. It begins to organize the energy around you. Situations resolve more quickly. Intuition becomes clear. Synchronicities align like pieces of an invisible puzzle. Why? Because the universe doesn't respond to your thoughts. It responds to your vibrational state. And presence is the purest frequency of consciousness. Being present doesn't just mean physically being somewhere. It's an inner state. It's feeling your body, your breath, sensing the sounds, the details, the silence. It's looking at something, a person, a landscape, a conversation, with your full attention as if nothing else exists. In that moment, you enter the real time of creation, and everything you observe in that state begins to transform. Here's the key. Time bends before the present observer, and when time bends, it stops being a prison and becomes a mirror, reflecting your inner state. If you're scattered, it shows chaos. If you're centered, it shows clarity. The law of presence is the gateway to all the other laws. Without it, everything stays on the surface. Intention lacks power, faith has no root, silence becomes escape, and frequency loses direction. But with it, everything connects, because in presence, your observation becomes alive. You can begin right now. Breathe. Bring your attention to this moment. Feel. Don't think. Just be. Right here, where everything truly happens. Observe with presence and watch time bend to your consciousness. Law 2, the law of neutrality. There's a place within you where everything just is, where there is no judgment, no label, no resistance. It's in this quiet space that reality begins to transform in its purest form. That place is neutrality, and it is one of the most underestimated forces in conscious creation. From a young age, we learn to react, to label things as good or bad, to create stories, interpret, categorize. Without realizing it, we turn every gaze into a conditioned filter. We observe reality as if it were obligated to fit our expectations, but the more we judge, the more we tighten the flow of energy. And the more we try to control, the more reality slips away. The law of neutrality says this: when you observe without labeling, you break vibrational resistance. This isn't indifference, it's freedom. Neutrality isn't apathy, it's openness. It's a vibrational state where you don't trap what's happening inside rigid interpretations. You simply see, you feel, you allow. And in doing so, energy that was once blocked begins to move again. The mind thinks it must understand in order to accept, but there is a higher wisdom in surrender. When you release judgment, you allow the field to reorganize the situation beyond your immediate comprehension. Life takes care of reframing, transforming, adjusting what's needed, and you move from tension to trust. Neutrality is presence without a story. It's the gaze that doesn't rush to conclusions. It's the awareness that knows each thing has its time, its unseen logic, its own curve of growth. In this state, you release massive amounts of energy that were stuck in resistance, in defense, in fighting what is. Notice this: when you resist a situation, it becomes heavier. When you label a person, they stop evolving in your field. When you judge an emotion, it crystallizes in your body. But when you observe any of this without judgment, with softness, with curiosity, reality begins to open again. What was stuck moves. What seemed fixed dissolves. What felt like a problem reveals its purpose. Neutrality is a creative frequency because it clears the field. And when the field is clear, the new can enter. In this state, you become a pure channel for manifestation, because the universe doesn't respond to your theoretical desire. It responds to the vibrational quality of your inner space. And the more neutral you are, the wider that space becomes. You can practice this now. Choose a situation that usually triggers you. Instead of analyzing it, just observe. Breathe within it. Feel what emerges. And for a moment, allow it to exist without needing to fix it, without needing it to be right or wrong. Just the simple act of observing without judgment already begins to shift it. Neutrality is one of the most powerful postures of the awakened observer, because when you leave the role of judge, you enter the role of creator. And from that place, everything can begin again. Law 3, the law of subtle intention. There is a kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't impose. It doesn't come from effort, but from quiet clarity. This power is subtle intention. And when it's present, the universe begins to move with near magical precision. Most people try to force things. They want something to happen, so they push, control, rush time, and pressure reality. But what they don't realize is that the more tension they create, the more they block the flow of energy. Because true creation doesn't arise from brute force. It's born in the field of pure intention, which doesn't need noise to be heard. The law of subtle intention reveals this: observation without intention is passive. But when aligned intention is present, energy gains direction. Intention is the invisible vector of consciousness. It guides the field. It organizes atoms. It determines the type of reality that begins to be drawn into your now. But here's the secret. Subtle intention doesn't come from an anxious mind. It comes from a conscious heart. It's not about wanting desperately. It's about declaring with clarity. Not about chasing at all costs, but aligning vibrationally with what is already yours by frequency. Whereas desire stems from lack, intention comes from certainty. While desire projects into the future, intention anchors into the present. And that difference changes everything. When you intend gently with silent conviction, the field understands. The universe picks up the signal and begins to rearrange the pathways. Not through force, but through resonance. Silent intention is more powerful than any forced action. You could be in complete stillness and yet move worlds through the simple act of intending with presence. This intention doesn't need to be verbalized or explained. It's a frequency. an inner state that carries direction, purpose, and surrender all at once. Imagine someone walking into a room with full clarity of who they are and what they are here to create. They don't need to assert themselves. No need to convince. Their presence already carries the intention, and the space begins to respond. Doors open, people draw near, information arrives. Not through manipulation, but through vibrational coherence. This is how subtle intention works. It doesn't shout, but everything hears it. It doesn't demand, but it organizes everything. It doesn't control, but it attracts all. Look at your life. Where have you been desiring with tension? Where could you instead breathe, go silent, and simply declare internally what you wish to see blossom? Not as a plea, but as a gentle reminder to the field. This is what I choose to vibrate, and I am ready to receive. To intend is a sacred act. It is the moment when you give form to your vibration. And subtle form is always more effective because it respects the field's timing, the flow of the universe, the rhythm of creation. You don't need to do more. You need to intend better, with clarity, with lightness, with presence, and then watch the invisible begin to work in your favor. Law 4, the law of faith in the invisible. There is a quiet quality that precedes all manifestation, a force that moves before form, before matter, before facts. That force is faith, but not faith as dogma or blind belief. Here we're talking about something subtler and more real. Faith as frequency. Faith as a vibrational state that shapes the invisible before it becomes visible. The law of faith in the invisible reminds us of a simple but forgotten truth. Reality responds to what you believe while you observe. Your consciousness, as it observes the world, is never neutral. It carries with it expectations, certainties, or doubts. And those vibrations shape how potential collapses into form. When you observe with doubt, hesitation, or disbelief, the field receives that as a signal of inconsistency. The energy around you scatters, situations feel unclear, paths delay. But when you observe with vibrational faith, that inner certainty that what you desire already exists in some dimension, the field begins to align. Not because you're forcing anything, but because you're vibrating with trust. This faith doesn't depend on evidence. It precedes the signs. It doesn't wait for proof to believe. It believes so that proof can appear. It's an energetic posture, a way of seeing the invisible as more real than what the physical eyes show. Imagine someone planting a seed. They don't go back every day to check if it's sprouting. They trust that life is moving beneath the soil, even if unseen. Vibrational faith is like that, the ability to maintain the frequency of creation, even in the apparent silence of reality. Even when nothing is yet moving on the outside, an entire world exists within. This faith requires no effort. It doesn't fight doubt. It simply vibrates above it. It knows the invisible is not absence. It is construction. What the senses can't perceive, consciousness can feel. And it's with that deep inner certainty that reality begins to take shape. You manifest what you observe with confidence, not with doubt. And confidence isn't blind, it's vibrational. It's born from understanding that there is a higher intelligence sustaining the flow of life, an intelligence that doesn't respond to your words, but to your vibration. Faith in the invisible is the act of observing as if what you want is already real. It's the courage to keep your gaze steady even when nothing has changed. It's the choice to keep intending, thanking, aligning, as if the invisible is already arriving. You can practice this now. Bring to mind something you want to co-create. Instead of desiring it anxiously, feel it with faith. Instead of wondering if it might happen, vibrate as though it's already in motion. Picture the details. Feel the emotion. Give thanks for what's already on its way. Do this not out of hope, but out of energetic conviction. Vibrational faith is the bridge between observation and manifestation. And the more stable that frequency is, the faster the invisible becomes real. You don't need to see to believe. You need to believe with the eyes of awakened consciousness to finally see. Law 5, the law of creative silence. There comes a moment when words fall away, thoughts quiet down, and control dissolves. And it's in that very instant that the universe begins to speak to you. Not through sound, but through signs. Not through logic, but through presence. This is the nature of creative silence. It isn't emptiness. It's the space where everything begins to take shape. The law of creative silence reveals a deep and often overlooked truth. When you stop speaking, controlling, and demanding, your observation gains power. While the mind shouts, the field contracts. But when you become silent, the field opens. True silence is magnetic. It attracts, reveals, connects. We live in an age of excess. Too much information, too many stimuli, too many words, too much mental noise. And in that excess, the wisdom of subtle reality gets lost. We try to solve everything with explanations, justifications, endless inner dialogue. But the energy of creation doesn't respond to noise. It responds to the kind of consciousness that knows how to become still. Creative silence is not omission nor absence. It is presence in its purest form. It's the moment when the observer stops interfering through egoic will and starts to sense the intelligence of the field around them. It's as if, in your stillness, you return to the original frequency of Source, where everything is already in order, where everything is already known, where everything is already possible. To silence is to trust. It's to allow energy to move without forcing outcomes. It's to accept that there is a rhythm wiser than your urgency, a response subtler than your question, a force more precise than your plans. In silence, you begin to hear what the mind cannot translate. Silence is where reality begins to obey you. Because in silence, your vibration becomes clean. Your subtle intention aligns. Your observation becomes a bridge between the invisible and the visible. Many of the most powerful manifestations don't occur at the moment of speaking, but in the space between words. Not through outer action, but through inner pause. Because it's in that space that energy organizes without resistance, without interference, without noise. The practice of silence doesn't require isolation or rituals. It begins in the simple act of not reacting, of observing without replying, of breathing before deciding, of listening to another without planning your response, and most of all, of listening to yourself without interrupting what wants to rise. You'll notice the more you quiet your inner world, the louder the universe begins to speak. Not in phrases, but in synchronicities. Not in direct answers, but in sudden clarity. Situations resolve. Inspiration appears. The right people come. Because silence isn't inertia, it's alignment. If your reality feels noisy, full of disruptions and confusion, maybe this is the invitation to stop speaking so you can start hearing. Not with ears, but with the soul, with the part of you that knows without thinking, that feels without doubting, that sees without looking. In creative silence, you don't lose control. You simply realize you never needed it because something greater is already at work. And that force only reveals itself to those brave enough to quiet down and receive. Law 6, the law of frequency, choice. Most people believe they make choices with words, logic, or pros and cons lists. But the truth is, the most powerful choice happens before all of that, silently at the level of vibration. It's the choice you make when you decide how you'll observe life, and that choice determines everything. The law of frequency. Choice says, you don't choose what happens, you choose how you observe it, and that defines what you experience. It's not the event that shapes your reality, but the vibrational state you hold while observing it. Life is not a string of random events, but a mirror that reflects the frequency of your consciousness. Two people can look at the same situation and live completely different realities. One observes with fear, tension, doubt, and their life feels stuck, unclear, and limited. The other observes with presence, trust, and surrender. And life flows, expands, transforms. The difference is not outside. It's in the vibration of the observer. This law changes everything about how you relate to the world, because it gives you back the power that you may have outsourced for years. You realize you don't have to control everything around you. You only need to adjust the frequency with which you choose to see what's happening. That internal choice is the seed of creation. Every thought, every emotion, every interpretation carries a frequency, and that frequency is a choice, even if it's unconscious. The choice to react or to observe, to judge or to embrace, to resist or to trust, to doubt or to intend. In every moment, that choice is shaping the reality that follows. Every decision is made first in how you choose to observe. Before you act, speak, or decide, you've already chosen, vibrationally, what reality you're inviting in. Awakened consciousness understands. The universe responds to frequency, not isolated desire. You may say you want peace, but if you observe life with constant worry, you're vibrating war. You may affirm that you want prosperity, but if you see the world through lack, you're sending out a signal of limitation. Reality doesn't hear what you say. It reads what you vibrate while observing. That's why frequency choice is so powerful. It invites you to stop reacting and start selecting the lens through which you wish to experience life. It's not about denying what's happening, but about choosing with what presence, with what posture, with what emotional field you wish to meet it. This law is freeing because it brings you back to center, a place where there is no guilt, no victimhood, only awareness and creative power. Where the question shifts from, why is this happening to me, to what frequency was I holding when I observed this? You can change everything right now, simply by changing how you observe. Swap fear for curiosity, tension for surrender, judgment for compassion, hurry for presence. And in doing so, even if nothing around you changes immediately, the field begins to respond differently, because you are observing from a new inner space. This is the deepest choice you can make, the choice of frequency. And once it is made, the outer world inevitably rearranges to reflect the new level of consciousness you've chosen to live in. We've reached the end of this journey, but really it's just the beginning of a new way of being. Now you know, there are 6 spiritual and quantum laws hidden in the simple act of observing, and your reality already obeys them. The difference is, from this point forward, you can activate them with awareness. Over the next 24 hours, try a new way of seeing. Observe with presence. Choose neutrality. Intend with subtlety. Hold faith in the invisible. Be silent with trust. And choose, moment by moment, the frequency you wish to inhabit. Don't force anything. Just observe, because it's in how you look that reality begins to bend. The universe doesn't resist those who observe with wisdom. And you've just remembered how to observe in order to co-create.